The Great Hall of Concordia Prime had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from 47 species filled the circular chamber, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes under the soft lights. The air hummed with translation devices, converting thousands of languages into comprehensible sound. At the center of it all stood the Galactic Council's High Speaker, a tall Veltharian whose blue skin seemed to glow with satisfaction. Today marked the end of the longest treaty in galactic history. Ambassador Chen sat alone in the human delegation section. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair pulled back in a simple knot. Her dark eyes watched the proceedings with an expression that might have been boredom. Around her, alien dignitaries whispered and gestured, their excitement barely contained. The High Speaker raised 3 of his forearms, calling for silence. The chamber quieted immediately. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "Today we witness history. Exactly 3,500 years ago on this very station, our ancestors made a difficult choice. They chose peace over continued warfare. They chose to offer mercy to a young, aggressive species that had brought destruction to our borders." Chen's lips curved slightly. It was not quite a smile. "The humans," the High Speaker continued, "arrived in our galaxy like a storm. They knew nothing of diplomacy, nothing of peaceful coexistence. In their first contact with the Vrin Empire, they responded to a simple territorial claim with total war. Billions died, entire worlds burned. The Vrin, who had dominated this sector for 10,000 years, were brought to the edge of extinction in merely 3 decades. A murmur ran through the assembly. Everyone knew this story, but hearing it aloud still sent ripples of unease through the chamber. The Vrin delegate, a massive creature covered in scale-like armor, shifted uncomfortably in its reinforced seat. "But we showed wisdom," the High Speaker said, his voice growing stronger. "We did not destroy humanity. Instead, we offered them the Treaty of Eternal Peace. We gave them sanctuary in their small corner of space. We taught them civilization. We showed them mercy." Chen's expression did not change. Under the treaty's terms, humanity agreed to limitations. No weapons of planetary destruction, no military forces beyond basic defense, no expansion beyond their assigned sectors. And they have obeyed. For 3,500 years they have been peaceful neighbors. They have traded fairly. They have shared their culture. They have become in every way civilized. The chamber erupted in applause. Delegates stood, their various appendages creating a symphony of clapping, clicking, and humming approval. "And so," the High Speaker announced, "the treaty has served its purpose. As of today, humanity is released from its terms. They are free to join us as equal members of the galactic community." More applause, louder this time. Chen stood slowly, her hands folded in front of her. That was when Admiral Kessethan of the Zethran Dominion rose from his seat. The Zethran was impressive, standing nearly 8 feet tall with crystalline features that caught and reflected the chamber's light. His voice cut through the celebration like a blade. "I invoke the right of challenge," he declared. Silence fell like a hammer. The right of challenge was ancient, rarely used, and absolutely binding. The High Speaker's glowing skin dimmed slightly. "Admiral Kessethan," he said carefully, "this is a day of celebration." "Surely, I invoke the right," Kessethan repeated. "The Zethran Dominion, backed by the full support of the Koltharan Federation, the Silex Collective, and 10 other sovereign nations, hereby declares a formal state of war against the human species." The silence shattered into chaos. Delegates shouted over one another. The High Speaker's translator struggled to keep up with the flood of voices. Through it all, Chen remained standing, perfectly still, her expression unchanged. Keston's voice rose above the noise. "The humans have violated the spirit of the treaty. They have expanded their population into protected zones. They have established colonies on worlds designated for future council use. They have grown too large, too comfortable in their assigned space. This ends now. We will remind them of their place in this galaxy." He turned to face Chen directly. "Humanity had its chance at peace. You squandered it. You forgot what you are, primitives barely worthy of the mercy we showed you. This war will be brief. You will surrender your illegal colonies. You will accept new restrictions. You will remember why you were caged in the first place." The chamber held its breath. Every eye turned to Ambassador Chen. She smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had just heard exactly what they wanted to hear. It was cold and sharp and utterly unsettling. "Thank you," Chen said quietly, but her voice carried clearly through the silent chamber. "On behalf of humanity, I accept your declaration of war." Keston blinked, confusion crossing his crystalline features. This was not the reaction he had expected. There should have been fear or anger or desperate attempts at negotiation. Chen continued, her smile widening slightly. "For 3,500 years we have honored the treaty. Every single term, every single day, we have been patient, we have been peaceful, we have been good neighbors." She paused, letting her next words sink in. "But the treaty is now ended. You have, as you said, released us from its terms." She bowed slightly to the High Speaker, then to the Assembly at large. "Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for this gift. We will remember it." Without another word, Chen turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the stunned silence. No one moved to stop her. No one seemed capable of movement at all. As the doors closed behind her, the chamber erupted into argument. Keston tried to speak, but his words were lost in the storm of voices. The High Speaker called for order, his glowing skin flickering with stress. The Vryn delegate sat perfectly still, staring at the door through which Chen had departed. Deep in the Sol system, 9 billion kilometers from Earth, something ancient stirred to life. Defense Platform Theta-7 had orbited Saturn's moon Titan for 3,500 years, disguised as an old mining station. Its hull was pitted and scarred, deliberately maintained to look abandoned and forgotten. Inside, systems that had been sleeping began to wake. Lights flickered on in corridors that had been dark for millennia. Reactors hummed to life, power flowing through conduits that had run cold for longer than most species had known space travel. Weapons arrays, hidden beneath layers of false plating, began their startup sequences. A communications officer, one of the skeleton crew that had maintained the station in secret all these centuries, stared at her console in disbelief. "Confirm signal," she whispered. Her commanding officer, a man whose family had served on this station for 40 generations, checked his own screens. Then he smiled, the same cold smile Ambassador Chen had shown the council. "Confirmed," he said. "Treaty status terminated. All platforms, full activation authorized." He paused, savoring the moment. "Send the message. Tell them we're coming home." Across the Sol system, on moons and asteroids, in orbital paths and hidden in planetary rings, 3,000 defense platforms received the signal. 3,000 stations that the galaxy had forgotten or never known existed came online. Humanity had been patient for 3,500 years. That patience had just ended. The galaxy was about to remember why humanity had been caged in the first place, and it was going to learn why cages only work if the prisoner wants to stay inside. Admiral Keston stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and felt satisfaction flow through his crystalline body. Around him, 300 warships held formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the local star. This was the largest battle fleet the Zethran Dominion had assembled in 2,000 years. It would be more than enough to crush one small human colony. "Status report," Keston commanded, his tactical officer, a younger Zethran whose crystals still showed the blue tint of youth, consulted his displays. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral. We are 3 hours from New Johannesburg. Intelligence confirms minimal defenses, perhaps 20 orbital platforms, outdated design. No capital ships detected." Keston nodded, the movement sending light refracting through his body. "The humans have grown soft. 3,500 years of peace have made them forget what real war looks like." He pulled up a holographic display showing New Johannesburg. It was a modest colony, home to perhaps 50 million humans. Agricultural world mostly. Some light industry. Nothing that suggested military significance. "They will surrender quickly," Keston predicted. "A few demonstrations of force, destruction of their platforms, and they will beg for mercy. Then we move to the next system and the next. Within a month, humanity will accept any terms we offer." The bridge crew murmured agreement. Why would they not? The Zethran had studied human society for decades. The humans were traders now, artists, farmers, engineers. They built things, they did not destroy them. Their largest warship was barely a patrol vessel by galactic standards. The galaxy had won. Civilization had triumphed over barbarism. 3 hours later, the fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Johannesburg system. Alarms immediately began sounding. "Contact," the sensor officer shouted. Single vessel, human configuration, moving to intercept. Kessethan leaned forward, studying the image on the main display. It was a frigate, small by any measure. Its hull showed the wear of long service, scarred and patched in multiple places. The ship's design was old, possibly even from before the treaty. One ship? Kessethan said, his voice carrying both amusement and contempt. They send one ancient frigate against 300 warships? It is broadcasting, Admiral, the communications officer reported. Audio only. Let us hear what they have to say, Kessethan ordered. The voice that came through was human, male, speaking with an accent Kessethan's translator identified as South African. Zethran Fleet, this is Captain Marcus Botha of the Human World Starship, remember. You are in violation of human territorial space. Turn back now and there will be no consequences. Continue forward and you will be destroyed. Laughter erupted across the bridge. Even Kessethan could not help but feel a flutter of amusement. The arrogance was almost charming. Captain Botha, Kessethan replied, you are outnumbered 300 to 1. Your ship is obsolete. Withdraw immediately, and I will allow you to live. There was a pause. Then Botha's voice came back, and there was something in it that made Kessethan's amusement fade slightly. It was not fear. It was not even anger. It was something else. Something old. We gave you a chance, Botha said simply. Remember that. The remember opened fire. It was, as Kessethan had predicted, hopeless. The frigate's weapons were outdated kinetic cannons, no match for modern shielding. The Zethran fleet did not even need to maneuver. They simply focused fire from a dozen ships and cut the remember apart in less than 3 minutes. Debris confirmed. The sensor officer reported. No survivors detected. The colony is defenseless, Admiral. Kessethan felt a moment of disappointment. He had expected more somehow. The humans of old, the ones who had nearly destroyed the Vryn, would never have sacrificed a ship so pointlessly. Perhaps they really had forgotten how to fight. All ships advance on the colony. Prepare bombardment. Admiral! The sensor officer's voice cracked with alarm. Multiple contacts. Range 15,000 kilometers and closing. The main display changed, and Kessethan felt something he had not felt in his entire military career. Fear. Ships materialized around his fleet like ghosts, becoming solid. Not one or two. Not dozens, hundreds. They appeared from nowhere, their stealth systems shutting down simultaneously, their weapons already hot and tracking. Count? Kessethan demanded, his voice sharp. 217. No, 243. Contacts still appearing, Admiral. They are surrounding us. Kessethan stared at the display. Every human ship was different. Different sizes, different configurations, different designs. Some looked like warships. Others looked like cargo vessels or passenger liners or mining ships. But every single one was armed and every single one was moving with military precision. How? He whispered. Intelligence said. Intelligence was wrong, a new voice said, cutting into the communications channel. This voice was female, calm, almost conversational. This is Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, Human Defense Fleet. Captain Botha gave you a chance to leave. You killed him. That was a mistake. You are still outnumbered. Kessethan shouted, trying to find his confidence again. We have 300 ships. You have 298, Okonkwo corrected. The remember took 2 of yours with it. You just did not notice yet. Check your right flank. Ships 47 and 48. Kessethan's tactical officer checked and his crystals paled. Confirmed, Admiral. Both ships reporting critical damage. They are requesting permission to withdraw. As for being outnumbered, Okonkwo continued, let me teach you something about humans, Admiral. We do not fight fair. We fight to win. The human ships attacked. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. The Zethran ships were powerful, their weapons advanced, their shields strong. But they were designed for traditional warfare. Ship against ship, honor and glory, in formation fighting. The humans fought like predators who had studied their prey for 3,500 years. Ships that looked like cargo vessels launched missiles that ignored shields and burned through hulls. Ships that looked like passenger liners deployed swarms of autonomous drones that targeted engines and weapon systems. Ships that actually were warships, hidden among the civilian designs, cut through Zethran formations with weapons that should not have existed. Kessethan tried to organize his fleet, tried to fight back, but every order seemed to come too late. The humans anticipated his moves, countered his strategies, exploited weaknesses in Zethran ship design that should have been secret. How do they know our tactics? His tactical officer screamed over the sound of alarms. How do they know where our vulnerable points are? The answer came from Admiral Okonkwo, her voice still calm, still conversational, as if she were discussing the weather. We have been watching you for 3,500 years, Admiral. We have studied every ship design, every tactical manual, every training exercise. We have had agents in your shipyards, your military academies, your government offices. We know everything about you. You know nothing about us. Kessethan's flagship shuddered under multiple impacts. Shields were failing. Half his fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The others were trying to flee, but human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and absolutely relentless. Retreat, Kessethan ordered. All ships, emergency jump! Get us out of here! Jump drives are being jammed, Admiral. His engineer reported, his voice breaking. We cannot leave, Okonkwo's voice came again. I am going to let one of your ships go, Admiral. Just one, do you know why? Kessethan could not answer. He was watching his fleet die around him, watching 300 of the finest warships in the galaxy being torn apart by an enemy that should not exist. Because someone needs to go back and tell your people what happened here, Okonkwo explained. Someone needs to tell them that the humans they thought they knew, the peaceful traders and artists and farmers, never existed. We were always here, waiting. You just forgot to look. Kessethan's ship shuddered again. Through the viewport, he saw the human ships holding position. Weapons still charged, still ready, but no longer firing. You have 10 minutes to abandon ship and get your crews to escape pods, Okonkwo said. After that, I will destroy every vessel that remains. Go home, Admiral. Tell them what you saw. Tell them that humanity is coming. And tell them that we remember everything. The transmission ended. Kessethan stood on his dying bridge and finally understood the mistake they had made. The treaty had never been humanity's cage. It had been the galaxy's protection. And now that protection was gone, one Zethran ship, badly damaged, jumped away from the battle. Inside were survivors who would carry stories of this day. Stories that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The humans had not forgotten how to fight. They had simply been waiting for permission to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives shouted over one another, their translation devices struggling to keep pace with the flood of panicked voices. News from New Johannesburg had spread quickly, and with it reports from dozens of other systems. Everywhere the allied species had attacked humanity, they had been crushed. The High Speaker's blue skin had lost its glow entirely. He looked gray now, ancient and tired. Order, he called out, his voice barely carrying over the noise. We must have order. No one listened. A delegate from the Silex Collective was screaming about an entire battle group that had simply disappeared near the human colony of Nova Terra. A Colteran ambassador was demanding answers about how humans had disabled their primary communications network. Everywhere there was fear. The Vryn delegate rose from her seat. She was old, even by Vryn standards, her armor like scales pale with age. But when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of authority that came from commanding respect for 10,000 years. Silence. The chamber quieted. Every species in the galaxy feared the Vryn even after all this time. They were the apex predators of the known universe, had been for longer than most civilizations had existed. You are all fools, the Vryn elder matriarch said, her words cold and precise. I voted against this war. I warned the council. You did not listen. The High Speaker's skin flushed with anger. Matriarch Vryn, the council made a democratic decision. You made an ignorant decision, she interrupted. You looked at 3,500 years of human peace and thought they had changed. You thought the treaty had civilized them? She let out a sound that might have been laughter, harsh and bitter. The treaty did not change humanity. It gave them time. She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed the galaxy, with human territory marked in blue. The blue was small, contained to a corner of the map. Around it, in red, were the territories of the species that had declared war. This is what you see, the matriarch said. A small human presence, limited and contained. Now let me show you what is really there. The display changed. New markers appeared across the galaxy, thousands of them, spreading like a web through every major system, every trade route, every political capital. For 3,500 years, humans have been everywhere, the matriarch explained. They came as traders, teachers, artists, engineers, students, diplomats. We welcomed them. We thought we were teaching them civilization. We were fools. She zoomed in on a system in Coltheran space. This is the Coltheran Military Academy. For 1800 years, they have employed human professors. Every Coltheran naval officer for the last millennium was trained by humans, or trained by officers who were trained by humans. The display shifted to show a Zethran shipyard. This facility has used human consultants for ship design efficiency for 2200 years. Every modern Zethran warship incorporates human suggestions for improvement. Again, the display changed, showing government buildings, research facilities, trade stations, communications hubs. Each one marked with the same indicator: human presence, long-term, trusted, integrated into the fabric of galactic society. They learned everything about us, the matriarch said. Our weaknesses, our tactics, our technologies, our secrets. And we told them freely because we believed they were our friends. We believed the treaty had made them safe. A Silex delegate stood, his insect-like body trembling. Are you saying every human in the galaxy is a spy? No, the matriarch replied. That would be inefficient. I am saying that humanity has spent 3,500 years building a network of information and influence that spans the entire known galaxy. Some knew what they were doing. Others were simply living their lives unaware that everything they learned, everything they saw, was being collected and analyzed. The high speaker sat down heavily. How do you know all this? Because my people did the same thing to them 3,500 years ago, the matriarch admitted. We studied humanity during our war with them. We placed agents in their systems, infiltrated their society, learned their weaknesses. It is how we nearly won. She paused. But when the treaty was signed, we withdrew our agents. We thought the threat was over. The humans never withdrew theirs. They simply made them invisible. A new voice cut through the chamber, amplified and clear. Every screen, every display, every communication device in Concordia Prime suddenly showed the same image. A human woman in military uniform, her dark skin marked with old scars, her eyes sharp and intelligent. Good afternoon, Council, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo said. I thought it was time we had a conversation. Security personnel rushed to cut the transmission, but nothing worked. Okonkwo continued speaking as if she had all the time in the world. My name is Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces. I am broadcasting this message from Earth, which I am sure surprises many of you. You thought human communications were limited to slower-than-light transmissions. You were wrong. We have had faster-than-light communication for 3,000 years. We simply never told you. She smiled, and it was the same cold smile Ambassador Chen had worn. For 3,500 years you have asked yourselves a question. What happened to the humans? Where did the warriors go? How did a species that nearly destroyed the Vryn become peaceful neighbors? She leaned forward. The answer is simple. We did not change. We adapted. We learned patience. The holographic display shifted, showing timeline after timeline of human activity across the galaxy. When you forced the treaty upon us, we were angry. We were young, aggressive, certain that we could fight our way free. But we were also intelligent enough to know we would lose. So we took a different path. We smiled. We signed your treaty, and we began the longest military operation in human history. Images flashed across every screen, human traders mapping every system they visited. Human students in military academies learning alien tactics, human engineers in shipyards understanding alien technology, human diplomats in government buildings making friends and building trust. Every human who left our territory was a potential intelligence asset, Okonkwo explained. Not all knew it. Most were simply living their lives. But everything they learned came home eventually. Every detail, every secret, every vulnerability, we collected it all, analyzed it all, prepared for the day the treaty would end. She paused, letting that sink in. You wonder how we destroyed your fleet so easily. We designed half your ships. You wonder how we jammed your communications. We built your networks. You wonder how we knew where to strike? We have been watching you for 3,500 years. A Coltheran delegate found his voice. This is a violation of every principle of civilized society. Yes, Okonkwo agreed calmly. It is, but we learned from the best. The Vryn did the same to us, remember? They infiltrated our world, studied us, prepared to destroy us. We simply did it better and for longer. The high speaker tried to speak, but Okonkwo continued. I want to be very clear about something. We did not want this war. We honored the treaty, every word, every clause for 3,500 years. We could have broken it at any time. We could have revealed our true strength and demanded new terms. We did not, because we are not the barbarians you think we are. Her expression hardened. But you declared war on us. Admiral Keston and his allies decided that humanity needed to be reminded of its place. Well, consider this your reminder of what happens when you force humans to fight. New images appeared, showing human fleets moving through space, not in dozens or hundreds, but in thousands. Ships of every size and configuration, all armed, all moving with perfect coordination. We are not just defending our colonies, Okonkwo said. We are advancing. Every species that voted for this war will face consequences. Every leader who thought humanity was weak will learn otherwise. Every system that supported the declaration will understand what it means to face an enemy that has been preparing for 3,500 years. The matriarch watched the broadcast with an expression that might have been respect. She remembered the humans of old, the ones who had fought her people with such ferocity. She saw that same determination now, refined and focused by millennia of patience. You gave us 3,500 years, Okonkwo concluded. We used every second. We learned everything. We prepared for everything. And now you will face what you created. A humanity that combines the patience of ancient civilizations with the ruthlessness of young warriors. A humanity that remembers every slight, every restriction, every condescending word about how we needed to be civilized. She leaned back, her smile returning. The treaty is over. The cage is open, and humanity is done waiting. To those species who were forced into this war, who voted against it or had no voice, we offer peace. To those who led this aggression, we offer one chance to surrender. Choose wisely. Choose quickly, because we are done being patient. The transmission ended. The council chamber sat in stunned silence. Then slowly delegates began to leave, some to contact their governments, some to sue for peace, some to prepare for what was coming. The matriarch remained seated, watching them go. The high speaker approached her, his skin flickering with distress. What do we do? He asked. She looked at him with ancient eyes. We hope they show us more mercy than we showed them. The Zethran homeworld of Crystalis Prime had stood unconquered for 8,000 years. Its orbital defenses were legendary, layer upon layer of shields and weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Its surface was protected by atmospheric processors that could turn the air itself into a weapon against invaders. No enemy had ever breached its defenses, until now. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the HWSS Indomitable, watching the crystalline planet grow larger on the view screen. Around her flagship, 2,000 human ships held position, but none of them were firing. They did not need to. Status of the blockade, she asked her tactical officer. Complete, Admiral. No ship has left or entered Zethran space in 48 hours. Their trade is cut off. Their communications with their colonies are being jammed. They are isolated. Okonkwo nodded. Open a channel to the planetary government. The screen changed to show a council chamber deep within Crystalis Prime. 7 Zethran leaders sat in a semicircle, their crystalline bodies dimmed with stress. At their center was High Chancellor Drexvon, the architect of the war declaration. Admiral Okonkwo, Drexvon said, his voice attempting confidence and failing. You cannot take this world. Our defenses are impenetrable. You will waste your forces against our shields and achieve nothing. I know, Okonkwo replied calmly. That is why I will not attack. Confusion rippled through the Zethran Council. Drexvon leaned forward. Then what is the purpose of this blockade? I am going to wait, Okonkwo said simply. Your world imports 70% of its food. You have enough reserves for perhaps 6 months. I can wait longer than that. You would starve billions of civilians? Another council member demanded, his voice shaking with outrage. No, Okonkwo corrected. You would starve billions of civilians. I am offering you a choice. Surrender now, unconditionally, and I will allow aid shipments through. Refuse, and your people will pay the price for your leader's arrogance. Drexvon's crystalline features flushed with anger. This is barbaric. This is not civilized warfare. Okonkwo's expression did not change. You declared war on us. You sent fleets to destroy our colonies. You intended to kill millions of human civilians to make a political point. Do not speak to me about civilization. She gestured to her communications officer. I am transmitting a document to your government now. It contains my terms for surrender. You have 72 hours to accept. After that, the blockade becomes absolute. No ships in, no ships out, no exceptions. The transmission ended. In her private quarters later, Okonkwo reviewed reports from across the war zone. The picture they painted was clear. The allied species that had declared war on humanity were fracturing. 12 species had already sued for separate peace, accepting human terms without argument. 5 more were negotiating. Only the Zethran, the Kulthuran, and 3 smaller nations remained defiant. A chime indicated an incoming message. Private channel, heavily encrypted. Okonkwo opened it and found herself facing the Vryn Elder Matriarch. "Admiral," the matriarch said without preamble, "I wish to speak with you about the past." Okonkwo studied the ancient alien carefully. "The past where your people tried to exterminate mine?" "Yes." The matriarch's tone carried something that might have been regret. 3,500 years ago, my people made a mistake. We saw your species as a threat, as primitives who needed to be controlled or eliminated. We were wrong. And yet you nearly succeeded, Okonkwo said. We did. And then, at the moment of our victory, we stopped. Do you know why? Okonkwo leaned forward. This was history that had never been fully explained. Details that had always been classified in Vryn archives. We stopped because we finally understood what humanity was, the matriarch continued. We had been fighting you for 30 years. We had destroyed your colonies, killed billions, pushed you to the edge of extinction, and you did not break. You did not surrender. You became more dangerous, more creative, more vicious with every loss. We realized that if we continued, one of 2 things would happen. Either we would have to exterminate your entire species, every man, woman, and child, or you would eventually find a way to destroy us. She paused, and Okonkwo saw genuine emotion in those ancient eyes. We chose the treaty not because we were merciful, the matriarch admitted. We chose it because we were afraid. Afraid of what you would become if we pushed you too far. Afraid of the weapons you would invent, the tactics you would develop, the lengths you would go to survive. So we convinced the council to cage you instead. We thought time would soften you, make you forget your anger. You thought wrong, Okonkwo said. Yes, but I hoped I was right. The matriarch's expression shifted. I am contacting you now because I want you to understand something. The Zethran will not surrender. Their pride will not allow it. They will force you to do something terrible. When that moment comes, remember that the galaxy is watching. Remember that how you win this war will define how the galaxy sees humanity for the next 10,000 years. The transmission ended before Okonkwo could respond. 3 days later, the Zethran High Chancellor sent his response. It was a single word. Never. Okonkwo sat in her command chair, looking at that word for a long time. Then she activated her ship-wide communication system. All personnel, this is the Admiral. The Zethran government has refused surrender. We are proceeding to Phase 2 of Operation Long Memory. All ships maintain blockade positions. Intelligence Division, begin broadcasting. Across the human fleet, communications arrays came online. But they were not aimed at military targets. They were aimed at every civilian receiver on Crystallis Prime, every personal communication device, every public broadcast system, every network node. The broadcasts were not human. They were Zethran. Recordings, documents, intercepted communications, all gathered over 3,500 years of patient observation. They showed the truth of the Zethran government. The corruption, the oppression, the crimes against their own client species. They showed secret agreements to enslave conquered populations. They showed prison camps where political dissidents were sent to die. They showed the luxury in which the High Chancellor and his council lived, while ordinary Zethran struggled. Most damning of all, they showed the truth about the war itself. Recordings of the High Chancellor and his advisors, discussing how the war would consolidate their political power, how controlling the humans would make them heroes, how the resources of human worlds would make them wealthy beyond measure. The broadcast continued for days, relentless and undeniable. Okonkwo had learned something in 3,500 years of studying galactic civilizations. The best way to destroy an enemy was not to kill them. It was to make their own people do it for you. On Crystallis Prime, riots began in the worker districts. Then the protests spread to the military garrisons. Soldiers, watching the broadcasts, seeing the truth about their leaders, began to question their orders. Officers tried to shut down the communications networks, but human hackers, who had been embedded in Zethran systems for centuries, prevented every attempt. Within 2 weeks, the first military units defected. Within a month, half the planet was in open revolt. The High Chancellor and his council barricaded themselves in their fortress, protected by loyal guards and ancient shields. It made no difference. Their own people tore down the gates. Admiral Okonkwo watched the news feeds as Drexvon and his council were dragged from their fortress by a mob of their own citizens. She felt no satisfaction, no joy, only a grim sense of completion. "Open a channel to the new provisional government," she ordered. The screen showed a Zethran female, her crystals dulled with exhaustion but her voice clear. "Admiral Okonkwo, I am Representative Shivaka, speaking for the Zethran people. We wish to apologize for the actions of our former government. We wish to make peace." "Peace requires more than wishes," Okonkwo replied. "It requires accountability. The individuals responsible for this war will stand trial. The Zethran military will be reduced to defensive forces only. Your government will pay reparations to every human family that lost someone in this war, and you will accept human observers in your government for the next century." Shivaka did not hesitate. "We accept all terms. The Zethran people want no more of this war. We want no more leaders who choose pride over peace." Okonkwo nodded. "Then we have an accord. The blockade will be lifted. Aid shipments will begin immediately. And the war, at least for your people, is over." After the transmission ended, Okonkwo's second-in-command approached her. Commander Price was young for his rank, but he had proven himself in the early battles of the war. "Admiral," he said quietly, "some of the crew are calling it cowardly, using broadcasts instead of weapons, turning their people against them instead of fighting directly." Okonkwo looked at him with tired eyes. "War is not about courage, Commander. It is about winning while minimizing casualties on both sides. We could have bombarded Crystalis Prime. We could have killed billions. Instead, we removed a corrupt government and freed a people from tyranny. If that is cowardice, then I will wear that label proudly." She turned back to the view screen where human ships were already beginning to move out of blockade positions. "Send word to all fleets," she ordered. "The Koltharan Federation is next. And when we are done there, this war will finally be over." The war ended not with a final battle, but with a document. The Treaty of New Geneva was signed in a conference chamber on Earth, deep in the mountains of Switzerland where humans had once resolved their own conflicts. The symbolism was deliberate. This time, humanity wrote the terms. Ambassador Chen sat at the head of the long table, the same cold smile on her face that she had worn when the war began. Around her sat representatives from every species that had participated in the conflict. Some came as victors alongside humanity. Most came as the defeated. The Koltharan Federation had fallen much like the Zethran Dominion, torn apart from within by revelations of government corruption and incompetence. The smaller allied nations had surrendered quickly, once they realized they faced not just a military defeat, but complete economic and social collapse. Only 3 species had required direct military intervention, and even then, human forces had struck precisely at leadership and infrastructure, avoiding civilian casualties wherever possible. It had been, by historical standards, a remarkably clean war. Only 17 million military casualties across all species combined. In a galaxy of trillions, that was barely a rounding error. But the political casualties were total. Every government that had supported the war declaration had fallen. Every leader who had called for humanity's subjugation was now in prison or exile. The treaty itself was simple in its terms, but profound in its implications. Chen read the document aloud, her voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. Article 1. Humanity shall have unrestricted rights to expansion, colonization, and development in any unclaimed system within the galaxy. All previous territorial restrictions are hereby nullified. A Silex representative shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but said nothing. What choice did they have? Article 2. All species shall maintain permanent human liaison officers within their military command structures. These officers will have full access to strategic planning and force deployment information. This caused a murmur around the table. The Vryn matriarch, who sat as an observer rather than a signatory, nodded slowly. She understood what this meant. Humanity would never again be surprised by galactic aggression. They would see it coming long before it arrived. Article 3. The Galactic Council is hereby reformed. Humanity shall hold permanent observer status with veto power over any declaration of war or military action. More murmurs, louder this time. This was unprecedented. No single species had ever held such power over the council. But again, no one objected. Not after what they had witnessed. Chen continued through the remaining articles. Reparations, yes, but reasonable ones. War crimes tribunals, yes, but with fair procedures. Disarmament of aggressive military forces, yes, but with allowances for legitimate defense needs. The terms were harsh but not vengeful. They were the terms of a species that had learned from 3,500 years of studying galactic politics. When she finished, Chen looked around the table. Does any representative wish to speak before signing? Silence. Then Representative Shivaka of the New Zethran government stood slowly. I would like to say something, she said, her voice quiet but steady. On behalf of my people, I want to express our gratitude. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. Gratitude? Yes, you could have destroyed us. You could have done to us what our leaders intended to do to you. Instead, you freed us from a government that had oppressed us for generations. You showed restraint when you had every right to show fury. That is not the action of barbarians. That is the action of a truly civilized people. She bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in Zethran culture. Chen's expression softened slightly, though the smile remained cold. We learned from your mistakes, Representative. We learned what happens when you try to cage a sentient species. We learned what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. We will not make those mistakes ourselves. One by one, the representatives signed the treaty, some with resignation, some with relief, all with a new understanding of their place in a galaxy that had changed fundamentally in the space of a few months. When the signing was complete, Chen stood. There is one more matter to address, she said. The Galactic Council asked me to deliver a message about humanity's intentions moving forward. I will do so now. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Human territory was marked in blue, still relatively small compared to the ancient empires. But surrounding that blue were green markers, thousands of them, indicating systems where humans had significant presence or influence. For 3,500 years, you asked us to be civilized, to be peaceful, to be good neighbors. We did exactly that. We traded fairly, we shared our knowledge, we made friends across the galaxy, and when you declared war on us, those friends remembered who we had been to them. She gestured to several representatives who had fought alongside humanity. The Deltharian Collective could have remained neutral. Instead, they sent fleets to our aid. The Paxian Republic could have waited to see who won. Instead, they shared intelligence that saved human lives. Dozens of species chose to stand with us not because they feared us, but because they trusted us. Her expression hardened again. But trust must go both ways. You will never again dictate to humanity how we may live, how we may grow, or how we may defend ourselves. You will never again assume that our patience means we are weak. You will never again forget that we are still the species that nearly destroyed the Vryn Empire. She paused, letting that sink in. However, she continued, her tone shifting slightly, we are also the species that chose peace when we could have chosen annihilation. We are the species that freed the oppressed even among our enemies. We are the species that will enforce this treaty fairly, applying the same rules to ourselves that we apply to others. Chen walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each representative. Humanity will be the galaxy's guardian, not its tyrant. We will stop wars before they start. We will prevent genocides before they happen. We will ensure that no species ever again suffers what we suffered 3,500 years ago. And we will do this not because we are superior, but because we remember what it felt like to be helpless. She returned to her seat. Go home, tell your people the war is over. Tell them humanity is watching. And tell them that as long as they live in peace, they have nothing to fear from us. The meeting adjourned. Representatives filed out, some speaking quietly among themselves, others lost in thought. Only the Vryn matriarch remained, waiting until the room was empty except for herself and Chen. You realize, the matriarch said, that you have just made humanity responsible for the peace of the entire galaxy. Yes, Chen replied. That is a heavy burden. It is. But someone must carry it, better us than those who would abuse the power. The matriarch studied Chen for a long moment. You are not like the humans I fought 3,500 years ago. You are patient, measured, controlled. But underneath I see the same fire, the same absolute refusal to yield. What happens when that fire is tested again? Chen met her gaze without flinching. Then the galaxy will learn that patience has limits, But it will also learn that we give warnings before we act, opportunities before we strike, and mercy when it is earned. That is the difference between the humans you fought and the humans we have become. The matriarch nodded slowly. Perhaps the treaty did civilize you after all, just not in the way we intended. She left and Chen was alone in the conference chamber. She walked to the window, looking out at the earth below. Green and blue, beautiful and peaceful, home to billions who would never fight in wars, who would never know the weight of the decisions made in this room. She thought about Captain Marcus Botha, who had died buying time for the fleet at New Johannesburg. She thought about the 17 million others who had died in this war. She thought about the billions who might have died if humanity had chosen vengeance over justice. The cold smile faded from her face, replaced by something more complex. Sadness, perhaps, or simply exhaustion. 50 years later, a child stood in the War Memorial Archives on Earth, reading the plaque that had been updated after the war. Her teacher, a veteran of the conflict, stood beside her. "We gave them 3,500 years," the child read aloud. "We used every second. We remembered everything. And when they forced us to fight, we showed them what patience had built. Never again will humanity be caged. Never again will we be unprepared. Never again will we trust the galaxy's mercy over our own strength." The child looked up at her teacher with curious eyes. Did we win because we were stronger? The veteran considered the question carefully. "We won because we were smarter, because we prepared, because we understood our enemies better than they understood themselves. But mostly we won because we remembered something important." "What?" "That peace is not weakness. That patience is not surrender. That being civilized means choosing not to destroy your enemies when you have the power to do so. The galaxy thought the treaty made us weak. It actually made us wise." The child thought about this, then asked the question that every young human asked eventually. "Are we the bad guys?" The veteran smiled, and it was not a cold smile. It was tired, knowing, but also proud. "No, child. We are the ones who make sure there are no bad guys left to threaten anyone. We are the guardians, the watchers, the ones who remember, so that the galaxy can afford to forget."